Now, before the podcast started, you were telling me that you wrote a 30-page paper on the carnivore diet.
It's not a paper.
Well,
I definitely spent a lot of time.
30 pages.
I thought about it for a long time.
Yeah.
And yes, there's 30 pages of thoughts and references.
Were you stunned that this became, I mean, this is a very recent thing that
Yeah.
people are just eating meat.
Well, at first, when I think Dan told me about it like a couple of years ago, even and I thought, there's no way. I was like, I just ignored it. I was like
crazy people.
I don't have time for that.
Right.
You know? So yeah, I definitely dismissed it when I first heard about it. But it's definitely been something that has gained a lot of traction.
Yeah.
Since.
Does it disturb you that it's gained traction?
Well, I definitely have concerns. I think that the most important question really is what is attracting someone to try such a very restrictive diet, that potentially could be dangerous without published evidence or any sort of long-term studies and things like that. So I think that the first question really is, well, why are people doing this? And so looking on the internet and try to read about people's anecdotes, it seems as though a lot of people are drawn to it because they have some sort of autoimmune problem. And so they try this diet and it improves their autoimmune symptoms. And I see that seems to be a real common theme, in at least if you look in the blogospheres and stuff like that. So that's, I think, kind of a good place to start, where it's like, well, what are people doing this for? And then, so that's kind of an important question. And so further reading about this diet, I sort of think about, well, what's going on? It's really important when you have something that leads to an effect to understand the mechanism, because the mechanism is, what's leading to this effect. And so if you can do something that's potentially not so dangerous or risky, then understanding the mechanism will help you, because then you can find other ways to do it, right? And so if you look at published studies on people that eat low-carb, high-protein diets, what's pretty common is that there's changes that happen in a variety of different endocrine factors, you're less insulin, that's changing your satiety and hunger hormones, leptin and ghrelin, and people become more satiated and they actually eat less. And this has been shown in multiple studies. So people actually eat less when they're having a higher protein diet, which makes sense too, because protein is more satiating as well. And also, there's also been studies on what's called food habituation, where basically, so habituation is when you're constantly exposed to the same stimulus, you sort of have a decreased response to that stimulus. Where there's been intervention trials where people are given the same food every single day, both non-obese and obese people, versus people that are given the same food once a week. And the people that are given the same food every single day, they start to eat less calories. So they start to eat less, naturally sort to caloric restrict themselves. So, I mean, and it's kind of like a dietary monotony sort of thing. So I think if you read, and the people out there on the blogs talking about this diet, they say, I'm eating less, I only eat twice a day, I'm fasting, so that's, people are talking about that as well. Mm-hmm. So I think there's published evidence to kind of explain that. And also there's, people saying, yeah, I eat less. So that's an important point, because one thing that's really known to affect autoimmunity is caloric restriction and fasting. It's probably one of the most well-known technologies that you can intervene and have improvements in autoimmune disease. So some of that has to do with the fact that you can sort of reset your immune system. There have been animal studies and human studies, a lot of this done by Dr. Walter Longo at USC. He's done some prolonged fasting in animals, and also there's been sort of like a fasting mimicking diet done in humans, which kind of a very low-calorie diet that sort of is meant to mimic fast. And those have shown that you basically kind of cross over, because fasting is a type of stress, you cross over into this stronger stress response where you're not only cleaning away all the gunk inside the cells. People talk about autophagy a lot when they're talking about fasting. You clean away things like damaged, pieces of DNA, protein aggregates, things like that. Mitochondria that are damaged get cleared out. But you also sort of start to clear away entire cells through a process called apoptosis. And in animal studies, what's been shown is that if you do, for example, a 72-hour fast, you can clear away about 30% of the immune system and replenish it with like brand new healthy immune cells. And literally, like, organs shrink during the fasting, and then they like re-expand because you're activating stem cells and you're basically replenishing all your damaged old cells with new ones. Well, Walter has shown in these animal studies also autoimmune cells tend to be selectively killed off and replaced with non-autoimmune cells. So he's also done a clinical study, a pilot clinical study with people with multiple sclerosis doing this fasting mimicking diet for 1 week. And their symptoms improved. Also, a ketogenic diet was done side by side, and ketogenic diet also improved symptoms of autoimmunity. So those both were done in humans. So I think that, understanding that some of these mechanisms that are at play and that fasting itself and caloric restriction both have been shown to improve autoimmunity, you may be tapping into something there by eating less. That's one possibility.